And welcome everyone to Learn a Trade. My name is Kevin Tate, and I'm glad to be here with you all today. Today's broadcast is called Turbo Chef Oven Maintenance and Troubleshooting Guide, Era Code Overview. So, with this guide, this is a new guide that we have on the site, and I just want to go over a small overview of the error codes because the error codes are pretty much a real quick way of being able to diagnose the problem with the unit. Um, when you're out in the field and you get a call, usually within that call, within the call description, you'll get unit has or machine has error code F3. So right off the bat, if you see that, it has a F3 error, then usually you'll know that there's an issue somewhere in the high volt circuit of the machine. There's a issue within the magnetrons. So what I'm going to do is I have this page set up right now that has the top three error codes that usually come up. And this is within our guide. And again, this guide is available to you on our website. Just go to the website that's listed below, and you can go to shop and go through the shop area, and you'll see the Turbo Chef Oven Guide available there for you. Um, but first, we have error code E1, okay, or on the machine, it'll be on the display as F1. It'll say F1. And a lot of times techs go into these sites and they see this error code up there. It'll be up there in red in the bottom left corner, usually of the display. And they won't know what that F1 means. So, of course, you can always go to your service manual if you have one. And again, you can get those service manuals on our website. So, go check out the website also to pick up the service manual, and that'll help you also. But today I want to go kind of in depth on these error codes. Um, in the manual, in the guide, we basically go over the top three: the F1, F2, and F3. And on here, we got it listed as error code. So we have E1, E2, E3, just to clarify that. But let's go with the E1, the F1 error code. The error code indicates a temperature sensor issue. Try resetting the oven by turning it off and unplugging it for a few minutes. If the error persists, then they tell you to contact the manufacturer. Um, or or another tech, that is a little more familiar with the error codes and stuff like that. But basically, your F1 error is your blowers. That's going to be your blower status is bad. There's a rear blower that blows the heat from the from through the top cavity, the top heating cavity of the oven, and this helps with the outside cooking the outside of the food. The Turbo Chef ovens, they cook with infrared, microwave, and um, conventional conventional oven heat, which is that blower. So this is how it cooks so fast. This is how it can cook a pizza within 2 minutes or a minute 50, because it's cooking it 3 ways all at once. So if that F1 error comes up there, you can be sure that you have an issue with the motor. Either that motor is not turning, or the connection is bad. It has a bad connection on the terminal going to the control, going to the board. So that's something where you would know right away when you see that. That's where you have to go. That's the area you have to go in, and that's right in the back of the machine. You'd have to turn the machine around enough so that you can get to the 4 nuts that are holding it in, and then if you have to remove it, if not, then you can check out the wiring from the back, and you'll be able to see clearly if there's an issue with the wiring. Another thing that happens with those blowers are the fins. The fins on the blower has a ring. The fins have a ring that goes around them that binds them together, holds them all together. And if that fin, if that binder is off a little, if it's off of one of the fins or a couple of the fins, then it's not going to turn right. It's not going to get the proper rotation for blowing, and then that board senses that there is a slow heat gain, so then it'll go into the error. So that's one area that you'll be able to go into and see what's going on. The next one is the E2 or F2 error. This error code typically indicates a problem with the oven's fan motor. Turning off the oven and unplug it from the power source. Check the fan motor for any visible signs of damage or obstruction. And then, if necessary, you can call the tech support or check out your manual. But on the E2, that basically is a slow temperature rise, or the temp is too low. So if the unit stays at a certain temperature for more than 10 to 15 seconds, then it's indicating that it's got a slow heat rise. And a lot of times it's talking about the fan motor here, and also um, as opposed to your fan motor, that's that blower motor. That fan motor, it could also be issue with the high limit switch that's in the back. It's in the rear on the left side of the unit of the machine. So it's on the bottom left. You can just reach back there, and you can feel there's a reset switch back there on that high limit switch. And that high limit is connected to the heaters. So if that high limit is tripped for any reason, if it's tripped, you can reset it. And then you can let the oven heat up again and see if it comes up with that same error. If it does come up with that same error, more than likely you have a problem with that. Your main problem is with the high limit. So it would be best to change out that high limit, and then also check out your fan motor. So um, and the way you can check out that fan motor is just by going into the diagnostic mode. You can go into the test mode of the machine on the service menu, and that's in the service manual also on how to get into the service menu. So you can go into that, and you would be able to test the fan. You could turn the fan up from 20% to 80%, and you'll hear the fan rev up. You'll hear it rev up each time you go up in that percentage. So that's a quick way of being able to test to see if that fan is actually working, and the blower. The next one is error code 3, F3. This error code usually indicates a problem with the oven's door switch or latch. Check if the door is properly closed and latched. If the error persists, contact your manufacturer or go to the service manual. On the F3 errors, um, you will you will have problems with the switch. But the thing that I found with these Turbo Chef ovens is they have multiple um, fault codes. Okay, they have it's between 1 to 12 fault codes. Okay, let me see real quick if I can just pull that one up. Give me a second. Let me let me remove this real quick, and then we'll put that one in. Give me a second here. Here we go. Okay, yeah, right here. See if I can slide it over for you. Hopefully you can see it pretty good. See if I can expand it a little for you. There we go. Okay, yeah, right here. So we have the F1 blower running status. That's your blower, possibly a bad blower. Um, F2, the cook temperature is low. That's the one we went over. And then F3, if you have an F3 error fault code, more than likely, in addition to possibly being the switches, it could possibly be, it more than likely has an issue. There's an issue in your magnetron current. Okay, with the magnetron current. The magnetron is what sends the radiation through the machine. Okay, and it's connected within the high volt circuit of the oven. Okay, so this is the error code that comes up the most, the F3 error, because in most of these sites, you got to understand these machines are running 24/7. They're running around the clock. And a lot of times they're not getting cleaned properly. So they'll tend to overheat um, or it just ends up arcing out. A few of you may have seen my Turbo Chef videos when I'm working on site, and you've seen a number of the calls where I showed you the arc marks on the wave guide. That's the area, that's the component that the magnetron connects to, and it sends the radiation wave through that wave guide and into the oven through two windows, on a window on each side. And you've seen those arc marks on there. So that's something that you're going to come across a lot on these, and just be familiar with it, that when you see that F3 error, more than likely you're going to have an issue in your high volt circuit. So that's where if you have that, that means that the magnetron current was low. On these turbo chefs, your magnetron current should be around between 14 to 17 amps. Okay, you should be pulling between 14 to 17 amps. These magnetrons are on a 20 amps circuit fuse. Okay, so if that fuse is 20 amps and you're getting 7, 6, or 7 amps, the computer is going to know that that's too low. That's not enough amperage to drive both of these magnetrons. And then in that case, your food's not cooking correctly either. So the machine will go into an error code. Usually after 1 or 2 cycles, it'll go into that error code. If it doesn't sense that 14 amps, it will go into that error code. So be aware of that, and know that's where you'll have to take some troubleshooting steps there to find out what side is given the problem. More than likely, it's one side and not the other. So you have 2 magnetrons on each side, on your left and right. You have 2 filament transformers on your left and right. Then behind those, you have 2 high volt transformers on your left and right. And just to note, always before you even take the covers off of these units, unplug them and turn off your breaker. Okay, if you can't find your breaker, that's fine. I understand that, but make sure you unplug it. Okay, these units pack a lot of amperage. Okay, and there's a lot of power there. So it's over 2,500 volts that this high volt circuit works with. So be sure that you unplug that and de-energize your capacitors. On the newer models, they say that the capacitors automatically de-energize once the unit has been shut down. So, but I always take caution, and I'll de-energize them anyway. Excuse me. But make sure that you unplug that first. And when you have that F3 error, your first thing is to go in and check your high volt circuit. Start from the back. Start from the high volt transformers. I've shown this a number of times on past videos, so you can always go back and look back at some of those old TurboChef videos, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But you want to start in your high volt area. It's up to you where you start, but just make sure you go through the steps properly. And with the high volt circuit, you want to check your number 4 terminal on the high volt transformer. On each high volt transformer, you want to go from ground with your meter on ohms. Okay, you're checking for continuity, and with your meter on ohms, you want to go from terminal number 4 on the transformer to ground with your other lead, and then from there you should get between 55 to 65 ohms. 55 to 65 k ohms. So you should get that reading. If it's off, if it's like 30, 40 k ohms, then you have you have a bad secondary side, and then on that transformer. But then so that tells you that you're going to have to replace that transformer already. But it's always good to check your number 1, 2, and 3 terminals, which are on the bottom of the transformer on the primary side, and you can pull the leads off of that, and then go from position terminal number 1 to terminal number 2 on your transformer, and then you should get between 0.08 to 1 ohm from position 1 and 2. Okay, if you're not getting that, then you definitely know there's an issue with it. But I advise that even if your 1, 2, and 3 terminals are good, and you have not a good reading on terminal number 4, it's best to go ahead and change that transformer out. And you want to do that on both sides. Okay, so then from that point, say that everything worked out on the high volt circuit. on the high volt transformer, I mean, go ahead and go move on to your filament transformers. Your filament transformers have two red wires that are going. One's going from the filament transformer to the magnetron, and the other one's going from the filament transformer to the capacitor. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to pull both of those red wires off. Pull one red wire off of your magnetron, pull the other red wire off of your capacitor. Ohm them out, those two red wires. Ohm those out, and you should get below zero below 0.01 amps ohms, I mean. So just make sure you got a low ohms on there. It doesn't really specify a specific number. They just say um, verify that you have low ohms. So just check that just to make sure. Your filaments mainly are to start up and warm up the magnetron. So it's kind of like a starter. So they're like an igniter. So those usually don't go. I've had very few of those that were bad. So it's still good to go ahead and go through the test just to make sure. But then from that point, then you want to go ahead and check your across your magnetron terminals. You'll take the other wire off of those magnetron terminals and then ohm out across those. And with that, you should get a very low ohms with that too. If you have a high ohm reading with that, like above one, then there could be an issue with that magnetron. But more than likely, once you remove that magnetron, because if you have a bad reading on it, it's best to go ahead and remove it. You need to remove it anyway so that you can make sure that your waveguide is not contaminated, because if there's any grease that's inside of that waveguide, that's going to be part of the issue that the F3 error is coming up for. So you definitely want to go through that and make sure that magnetron is good to go. If it's not, if you have any questions in your mind about it, the best thing to do is go ahead and change the magnetron, especially if you had a bad transformer on that side. Okay, so you want to check that on both sides also. And then from there, you would go ahead and check your capacitor, make sure your capacitor has 0.97 microfarads. And then if you have to go further, you can go ahead and check the diode that's connected to the capacitor, just to check the diode to make sure that you don't have any ohms between those terminals on the diode. And that's basically what you would run through on your high volt test with the F3 era. And then also, you would also take the right side panel off of the machine, take it off, and then check your K2 relay. The K2 relay will be, if it's on these newer machines, it'll be up top. You'll see there'll be three relays just plugged in to the top of the circuit board there, that top circuit board. If they're the older models, you'll see the relays. The relays are all on your right side. So you just remove the right side panel, and then go to find the K2 relay and take a look at it, because if that K2 relay has any damage, you'll be able to see it. It's like a clear plastic covering, and you can see into it. You can see the contacts. So you can see it'll look black, it'll look smoky inside, or the contacts themselves will be discolored. So if they look like they're discolored or anything like that, or any kind of damage, the best thing to do is go ahead and change that. And what's connected to that high volt circuit is a 20 amp fuse. So that fuse is is right on that right side also, just underneath um, the relays. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But on the older models, it'll be right on the right hand side. On the newer models, your relays will be up top, and your fuses will be just to the right side of the board on top, along with the relays. So you'll be able to see them, and you'll have a 20 amp fuse, and you'll have two 12 amp fuses, and you want to go ahead and test each of those. And more than likely, if you have a F3 era, that's going to be you're more than likely going to have a blown 20 amp fuse, especially if that relay is damaged. If it's damaged or arced or anything like that, more than likely you'll have to replace that fuse as well. But we can do more on the high volt testing and stuff as it goes. But like I said, you can always go back and check out my past videos too, and then that'll really clear up any other questions you may have on it. But moving on, there's a F4 era, which is a door monitor defective. So that's these little micro switches that are mounted in the door on the sides, on the sides of the machine, and the door latch assembly has has levers that hit the striker of each of those switches. You have three of those switches on the right side, the right bottom. You'll have a monitor switch. That's the first switch. Your second switch will be your secondary switch, and that'll be on the left side. The next switch will be your primary, and usually the secondary and primary are right next to each other. So you'll know what those are, and they're both on the left side. But more than likely, if you have a F4 era, it's that right size micro switch, and it's either sticking or the lever is missing the striker and it's not striking it at the right time, because those switches have to be hit in a certain sequence. It has to go monitor, secondary, primary. It has to go in that order when they close the door. And then when they open the door, it has to go in reverse. It goes from primary, secondary to your monitor. So just keep that in mind, because that's an easy thing that you can easily test out when you go into your menu, go into your service menu, go to test mode, and then once you're in test mode, you'll see on the bottom of the screen of the display, it'll be a PSM, and it's just those letters. And what you want to do is you want to open and close the door slowly. So go ahead and open the door, and as you're opening it, you'll see those letters highlight. You'll see them highlight, or yeah, when you're opening the door, you'll see those letters highlight. So when you're opening it, the primary will highlight, your secondary will highlight, and then when you get all the way down with the door completely open, then your monitor switch will highlight, and then you can close the door back, and then you'll see it go monitor, secondary, primary. And what you'll notice is if there is a bad monitor switch, that monitor switch won't highlight, or it'll highlight and then it won't go back out. And then that way you know you definitely have a problem with that monitor switch, and you can go ahead and switch it out. Next, you have F5, magnetron over temp. So the magnetron over temp, that's coming from the high limits. There's high limits on each of those magnetrons on each side. You have high limits there. And if that magnetron gets heated up too high, gets too hot, then that's going to alert the board, and then it's going to go into an error code because there's something wrong where either the two fans, there's two fans in the back that blow air on those through those magnetrons. The magnetrons have fins on them, and that air gets blown through there to kind of keep that area cool, to keep it a little cooler, and to regulate that heat going through there, because these machines get up to 500 degrees. So you need those cooling fans. So those fans are in the back. They're on the right and left side, and they blow through every time that the whole time that those magnetrons are turned on, those fans should be on. And there's also a center fan that blows into the electrical compartment, which is up top, to keep that board from overheating. And that fan, you can also check that stuff out while you're in test mode. You just go in the test mode, turn on your magnetron for a short minute, turn it on, and once you turn on the magnetrons, you'll see those fans. You'll see if those fans are blowing. If they're not, then there's an issue in the wiring of those fans, or there's a mechanical issue with the fans. And you usually won't see both of them go out. Usually it'll be one side or the other, but that's a good way to test it, to find out. And then one of the fans is out. So that's why it was overheating. Okay. Another thing, well, I think that's in here. Let's see. Yep, that was the next one, actually. F6, electrical compartment temperature high. So that's your in the manual, it'll be called EC temp, your electrical compartment. Okay, so just to let you know that it'll be called EC temp, and what that means is that electrical compartment, the temperature is getting too high, and there's a plenty of issues that could bring that up. Um, but the most important one that I found to be the more common one for the EC temp being high is because the customer they haven't been cleaning the machine, number one, and they haven't been cleaning the air filter, which is in the very back. The air filter slides in and out of two slots right in the fan compartment, where those three fans that we were just talking about, where those three fans are at, that's where that air filter goes over. Now, what happens is the customer won't clean it for a while, or just doesn't know that they're supposed to clean it, and then that thing just builds up with dust over time. And sometimes they get so thick that when you remove the 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 filter, when you remove the filter from the fan area, you hear the fans like suck in a bunch of air, like they've been starving for air. So so that's like something that you can look at right away if you see that electrical compartment temp too high. um, the next one is F7, RTD open. That's not a common one, but it does come up from time to time. It used to come up a lot more, but I believe they changed the manufacturer that they use for those RTDs, and then that problem's kind of settled down a lot. But the RTD is your return sensor. So that sensor there's two of them in the turbo chef oven. There's one up top that goes down into the top of the oven. It's right at the base of the top of the oven, and it's usually between the circuit board and those filament transformers, and it goes right down and sits in the center of that the top part of the oven. So that senses the internal temp of the cook cavity. And then there's another sensor that comes right in from the left side of the oven, and it sticks out of the rear left side inside of the oven. So you can see them both, and you can trace the wiring, and you can test those to see if they are open, because they're supposed to be normally closed. So those sensors are supposed to be normally closed, and then when they if they're open, then they're not sensing the temperature, and then the board that tells the board that there's a problem, because they're not it's not detecting any temperature. And those are something that usually can be taken care of on site, from the heat that these put out all of the time. That side RTD is usually very hard to unscrew and get out, but um, it depends on, letting it cool down, and then getting it out of there. And the next one is F8 fault code. That's heat low. Now that heat low fault code is the same thing I was talking about earlier with the blower. That's possibly that high limit that's on the back left side of the Turbo Chef oven. Okay, so that's that resettable high limit. Um, if you have a heat low era, okay, so F8 could possibly be your high limit, or it could be your SSR, which is your solid state relay. Okay, so that solid state relay is connected to the high limit, but it's on the right side, on the right rear, and it's a little black square box on the right rear of the oven. So it's behind that panel. You have to take that panel off, and then just look back there, just past the relays, and then you'll see it mounted against the oven, against the oven frame. And it has four wires going up to connecting the four terminals on the top part of the relay, and on the lower section of the relay, there's a four wire terminal that plugs into the bottom. Now, sometimes that relay goes itself, but a lot of times it's just that lower terminal, that lower four wire terminal that has backed off, and it's not connecting well to the terminal of the relay. A lot of times you get lucky, and you don't all you have to do is just push that terminal back in and make sure it's secured. um, and then that sometimes remedies it. But a lot of times, if that error code is constantly coming up, you'll want to change out the relay. Go ahead and change the relay if your high limit is not tripped. If it seems like your high limit is good, then more than likely it's your relay. If that if it's neither of those, if both of those are checking out okay, then you may have an issue either with your lower heater, or your upper heater. And in that case, you have to ohm out each of your heaters, and then that'll let you know. Because if your heaters are bad, it's just going to give you open line on your meter anyway. So F9, cook cavity temperature high. That right there could be um, your heaters could not be shutting off. There could be a heater that's on continually and it's not shutting off, so it's overheating. It could be your RTDs could not be reading right, or it could be a bad wire, a loose wire on one of the RTDs. So that's avenue that you can check out, just to see. But you really don't really see the cook cavity temperature high a lot. Um, let's see, F10, that's a communication failure, and that you really don't run into a lot, and unless there's an issue with the circuit board on the bullet models. These models that you see in the back of me there, um, those are the bullet models. On these bullet models, those circuit boards, they're communicating with it's communicating with the machine. But if there's a communication failure where the RTD is not reading the RTD correctly, or recently I ran into one that had a communication failure, and I ended up having to replace the display, the whole display, and that display was not communicating, so it just went blank. It was just a blank screen, so they couldn't do nothing. It was on. It was on. I could see lights and everything, but the screen was blank, so they couldn't do anything because those models are touchscreen, so they couldn't cook or do anything. But if you do have that communication failure on the bullets, more than likely you have a bad display, or the board that connects to the display is faulty. Next, we have a F12 error, which is a firmware reboot, and on this I've run into this over the years from time to time where the firmware has to be rebooted, and it's fairly easy because you have to contact the manufacturer for that and tech support, and you need to have a specific USB for that in order to do that, to reboot, and they'll send that out. If you're doing jobs in like a corporate convenience store or something like that, they usually will have their own field reps take care of those firmware reboots and stuff. So that's not really one that you really have to look into, because it usually gets taken care of at the corporate level. Then next down here, it just says door open message when door is closed. So this is saying like if they're getting a door open message when the door is closed, but it keeps saying door open on the display, that's usually an indication that you have a problem with one of your switches, one of your door switches, the monitor switch, the secondary switch, or the primary switch. No display where the screen is blank. That was one that I was just talking about. Usually that's the touch screen that's locked out and unresponsive. So that's something where usually you have to replace the uh, the screen itself. Another one is oven keeps cooling down, will not warm up. That's a common one that comes up from, and what you have to do with that is you'd have to test out your upper heater elements, your upper heater element, because more than likely that heater element expanded, and it broke. The One of the heater elements snapped and is touching against the frame of the oven. So it's thinking that it's satisfied, and it's not, and it's just going into cool down mode, because it's thinking that um, there's there's something there's something interfering with it, but what it tells the machine to do is just to cool down. So that's something that you definitely want to look at, the upper heating element with, if you see something where the customer is saying that it keeps going into cool down mode. Menu will not load the USB. That's usually a board issue. On the newer models, I haven't seen that a lot. On the older models, they had a run of issues with the USB loading on those older models, on the Encore models and stuff like that. So if you're working on an older Encore model, the best thing to do with that is you'd have to see about getting the USB drive assembly, and then replace it for them, and then see if that works. But usually when it's to that point, there's so much grease built up in that area that um, it would take a lot, because it might be further issues with the board or something. So just be aware of that. But you may not run into that a lot, because I noticed that they're getting rid of a lot of the older models. Next one was firmware will not update. That's something that tech support takes care of from their end. Food not cooking properly. Now this is one that comes in commonly, and I like to just clarify something for you. Especially if you guys are out there, if you all are out there in the field, if you're working for another company, if you're working for yourself, a lot of customers will come up with that, and they'll say that the food's not cooking properly. And when you get there, it may seem like it's cooking properly at 1 minute, and then the next time they do something, it doesn't it doesn't cook right. So a few steps that I usually take, that this may help you. When you're out there, it's tough to know, what if what they're saying is, how it's actually happening. But a good thing to do is see if they can give you some specifics. Like, is it the chicken that's not cooking right? Is it the pizza? And then they'll say, oh, no, it's the chicken and the pizza. And then a thing that you should really be aware of is how they're storing their food, how they're how they're storing their food. The pizzas are supposed to go from the freezer to the refrigerator for a refrigerator thaw, and then from the refrigerator to the oven, and then cooked. Okay. Now, sometimes you'll have customers that they're in a rush, and they'll just grab the pizza straight out of the freezer, um, cut open the wrapper, and pop it right in the oven. And no matter what, that's not going to cook right. Okay. So just remember that, because a lot of times, and they may not admit it to you, but you'll be able to tell once you ask them, how do you cook your pizza, and then they'll tell you, I put it in the fridge, and then I take it out after it thaws a little, and then I put it in the oven. That's fine. But if they're grabbing it right out of the freezer, and then they're putting it right in the oven, it's not going to cook right. The next one is check their freezer temperature. Okay, they usually keep these pizzas either in a reach-in, or they're in the walk-in, or they're in a under counter freezer, um, like a True, or something like that, or a Beverage Air. They're in the little under counter freezer. But go over and see where they're leaving their pizzas at in the freezer, and look at and with the chicken also, look at the temperature on the freezer, because for Turbo Chef suggests that the freezers be at seven between 7 to 10 degrees. Now, if you go to some of these places, you'll see the freezers are like -7 or -10. So at that point, even Turbo Chef will tell you the freezer is too low. They need to get the freezer to like between 7 to 10 degrees. And then they need to make sure that they're rotating the pizza from the freezer to the refrigerator before cooking. And the chicken, um, that's the same thing where that temperature needs to be in that range in order for it to cook right. Now, the next thing that comes up with this food not cooking properly is if two things. If the customer is, if they're doing cleaning on the oven or whatever, so if they're cleaning the oven out and they're not, in there and say they clean the stone, they go to clean the stone that's in the oven, the cooking stone. If they remove that stone and if they get it soaking wet, they're not supposed to submerge that stone. It's just a damp rag that they need to use to clean that off. So remember that for your customers also, that they should just use a damp rag to wipe that off. Don't soak the stone because that will damage the stone. So either they submerged the stone and they didn't let it dry long enough and they put it back in the oven, and the food's not going to cook right with that. Or they cleaned it off correctly, but then they put the stone back in upside down. There's two sides on that stone. There's a smooth side and then there's like a little rougher side. That smooth side has to be facing up all the time. And a lot of times with that call, if you get a call for food not cooking properly, a lot of times when you walk in and you just go straight, open the door and look at that stone, that's the issue. The stone was upside down, and then it's just a matter of flipping the stone over and then be on your way. Steam present during or after cooking. Uh, that's a common problem right there. That's a common complaint that comes up. And I've spoken with TurboChef tech support. I've spoken with engineering, and they still haven't came up with a remedy for the steam issue, other than the exhaust pans. They have an exhaust tube in the back, and then a pan that they're supposed to keep water in. The customer is supposed to keep water in that pan, and that pan is supposed to absorb the exhaust and lower the amount of steam that comes out of the front of those ovens. So that's something that you really have no control over, other than checking to see if they have water in the pan, which 9 times out of 10, you'll find there's no water in the pan. Or you'll find that the pan has holes in it and that the water that they put in there leaks out. So in that case, they have to purchase a new pan. And then at that point, you can go ahead and work on making sure that that exhaust tube is cleaned out. And then the last one here is speaker not beeping. That right there, I'll go into the menu, test out the speaker to see if the volume is up. If the volume's all the way up, then you have a faulty speaker, or you can have a bad connection on the little white terminal that the speaker's connecting to the board. And in that case, you can just fix that connection, or replace the speaker completely, and then readjust it for the proper volume that is comfortable for them. I know this probably was a lot all at once, but I really wanted to go over that troubleshooting on there. And I hope this was helpful to you all. And let me know if you have any questions or anything like that. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I appreciate it. It's helpful to get participation on these YouTube videos and stuff. So I thank you all for helping me out with that. And Remember to go to our website, www.learnatrade.online, and check out our new guide, Turbo Chef Maintenance and Troubleshooting. It goes over a lot more of the specifics on these ovens and stuff, and I think it'll be something that's of some value to you. So I thank you all for joining me today. Hope it wasn't too long. I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Stay well and be blessed.